we now have reporting that the chance of the U.S. once again going to war with Iran is very high. And this is kind of an underreported story at this point in time. At least on this show, we haven't been talking about this. But you kind of knew it wasn't going to end when Trump said that it ended originally. We did those big strikes. He said that we completely eliminated their nuclear program. And so, conversation done. What was I saying at the time? Doesn't feel like the conversation's done. Doesn't feel like y'all are being completely honest about the status of that operation. And look at this. Trump advisor warns 90% chance strike on Iran happens in coming weeks. The boss is getting fed up, is the quote. You have Mike Allen from Axios. The chance of war with Iran is higher than most Americans realize. Chance of a deal is small. This would be more of a war than an operation. Then referencing Venezuela, saying this will be more of a drawn out war than the initial strikes on Iran and then what happened with Venezuela. But again, as we listen, and I'll show you JD Vance speaking to this, of what their justification would be. You think back to the total obliteration. You remember total obliteration? How many times they told us the nuclear program was totally obliterated? And now they're telling us if they don't get a deal with Iran on that topic, we'll have to go to war? Or that might be an option? But, so to backtrack for a second, you withdrew from the nuclear agreement that Obama struck. Mainly, it seemed because Trump just hated that Obama got this accomplishment. Now you're saying we're looking for a diplomatic solution, but it's somehow going to be way better than Obama's. But actually, it's probably not going to work. We're probably just going to have to use the military to do something that we said we already did. And as we go through this segment, of course, I want to specify, just like when we talk about Venezuela or any of the other of these cases, Trump irresponsibly pulling us into a war that could have catastrophic consequences is not the same thing as, I will read you some of these posts from the Iranian supreme leader, as hyping up or whitewashing the legacy or actions of the Iranian regime. Horrific atrocities, especially in recent months, that we've seen against anti-regime protesters have been perpetrated by the Iranian regime. And they're horrible, this leadership. And at the same time, Trump can also be acting irrationally with his decision making. Let's watch JD Vance explain what's going on here, and then I'll show you what the supreme leader was shitposting on Twitter about. Just the quickest pause to request that you click the subscribe button, the simplest, easiest, freest way, completely free, to support the work that we do. Right below the video, click that subscribe button. Back to the video.
Well, I'm obviously not going to make any announcements today. I think the president has a lot of options. We do have a very powerful military. The president's shown a willingness to use it. He also has a remarkable diplomatic team. He's shown a willingness to use that too. And so what the president has been very clear with the Iranians, and actually I just talked to Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner this morning about some of their negotiations, is the United States has certain red lines. Our primary interest here is we don't want Iran to get a nuclear weapon. We don't want nuclear proliferation. If Iran gets a nuclear weapon, there are a lot of other regimes, some friendly, some not so friendly, who would get nuclear weapons after them. That would be a disaster for the American people, because then you have these crazy regimes all over the world with the most dangerous weapons in the world. And that's one of the things the president has said he's going to prevent. Now, we would very much like, as the president has said, to resolve this through a conversation and a diplomatic negotiation. But the president has all options on the table. And, one thing about the negotiation I will say this morning is, in some ways it went well. They agreed to meet afterwards. But in other ways, it was very clear that the president has set some red lines that the Iranians are not yet willing to actually acknowledge and work through. So we're going to keep on working it. But of course, the president reserves the ability to say when he thinks that diplomacy has reached its natural end. We hope we don't get to that point. But if we do, that'll be the president's call.
Yeah, and apparently, according to now numerous reports, you have this looking more and more imminent. Trump's armada has grown to include 2 aircraft carriers, a dozen warships, hundreds of fighter jets, and multiple air defense systems. Some of that firepower is still on its way to the region, and then it gives specifics, but a bunch of resources are being flooded as if to prepare for military action, which is a frightening prospect. Then this is what we're looking at next, which is Khamenei, the Iranian leader, is out on Twitter being like, oh yeah, you want to go to war? We're going to beat the shit out of you. Which is unwise, which is lunatic talk. And I'll show you that in a second. But The Hill has this reporting: Iran's supreme leader threatens to sink U.S. warships as nuclear talks continue. Doesn't feel like a great sign for the nuclear talks when Trump's on one end, like, we would crush you, and the other leaders on the other end, like, well, we would crush you. Hey, but I hope our officials make progress on that negotiation. This stark warning comes as officials from both the U.S. and Iran met for a second round of discussions about Iran's nuclear program in Geneva on Tuesday. U.S. representatives are pushing for a new deal with the country after the first Trump administration withdrew from the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, an Obama-era nuclear deal that placed limits on Iran's enrichment of uranium in exchange for sanctions relief. But now Trump's trying to make a deal of his own, and if that doesn't come together, we could see catastrophic consequences. So then here's a part of this age that we're in, is that world leaders, even extremely oppressive authoritarian world leaders, are just out on Twitter like any other person, and you can comment on her and be like, hey, shut up, dude, and maybe he'll see it. Like, what? And then like, Khomeini could respond to a Trump post and they could get into a Twitter battle as we're talking about nuclear weapon negotiations. Weird world that we're in. But he posted, the U.S. president keeps saying that they have the strongest military force in the world. The strongest military force in the world may at times be struck so hard that it cannot get up again. So as I said with Maduro, cut it out. Maduro, I said that. I called him. I said, Maduro, you can't be, I said, not a fan, brother, can't be going, be happy after you said you're going to smash in the teeth of the American regime. That does not mean that I'm projecting rationality onto our president. But trust me, you're not going to make it better with the very unstable man we have by challenging him like this. And then Maduro didn't listen, didn't work out well, which I also didn't think that was a wise operation by Trump, but it was obviously for oil, and that's completely deranged. And it then came out in reporting that Trump saw the videos of Maduro mocking him, and that's a part of why he gave the green light to the operation. We have too many unstable leaders in this world, to different degrees and to different consequences, and now they're just crap posting on each other on Twitter, and that can lead to war. It doesn't make me feel good at all. And he kept going. He was doing like a Trump-style Twitter meltdown. The Iranian supreme leader. Everything we had ever heard about their corruption is one thing. This affair of that morally corrupt island is another altogether. Oh no, he's talking about Epstein's Island. These are indicative of what Western civilization and liberal democracy are. They are perceived for 200, 300 years, and this is the ultimate outcome. Again, this is what's weird. Is it's like, hey. Epstein Island, terrible. Trump is really corrupt. You're really corrupt, Khomeini. So you don't get to talk about this. And what are you talking about, liberal democracy? How this is indicative of liberal democracy? Stop it. You want to go through the list of abuses because of authoritarian regimes against women and children and people in general? Then you have Khomeini saying the Americans say, let's negotiate over your nuclear energy. And the result of the negotiation is supposed to be that you do not have this energy. Yeah, kind of. Then he says this island. And the only reason I'm laughing is because of how absurd this scenario is, where everyone has a Twitter account. And I'm sure there's people under it like, get it, Big K, I get it. This island of corruption is only one example. There's much more of this. Just as this was not apparent and they became exposed, there are many other things that will soon come to light. Yeah. The fact that nuclear energy is our undeniable right has been also included in the guidelines of the International Atomic Energy Agency. That is, all countries have the right to own nuclear enrichment installations. This is among a nation's rights. Why does the U.S. interfere? Well, you are a very dangerous and oppressive and aggressive and unstable leader and regime. So it makes sense we wouldn't want you to have nuclear weapons. And that's what this has to do with. And that's why a diplomatic solution, as we saw Obama was able to secure, is the best option here. Bombing our way out of this, given our history in doing that, whether it be with regime changes or here specifically with nuclear weapons, doesn't feel like the way out. When we look at the disturbing atrocities committed by this leadership in Iran, by this government in Iran, the U.S. coming in and trying to bomb them out of power, again, seems very dangerous and not to be the proper solution. That doesn't mean we don't do international cooperation to try to put pressure on the Iranian regime, on nuclear weapons, or on the killings of their own people who are speaking out against the oppression of this regime. We should be working to uplift the values that many Iranian protesters are embodying that are much closer to our values. But Trump seems to just want a big show of force again. And they told us last time they had already solved the nuclear problem with the strike, and now they're proving to us they were lying. Because remember, take this down for a second. You just saw in that J.D. Vance video him talking about nuclear weapons. Look at this post back from June 25th, 2025. Iran's nuclear facilities have been obliterated. And suggestions otherwise are fake news. So is J.D. Vance doing fake news? Because he's saying clearly they haven't. Excuse me. And then you have like hype videos being posted of Khamenei threatening the U.S.
مرتبا میگه رئیس جمهور آمریکا که ارتش ما قوی‌ترین ارتش دنیاست. قوی‌ترین ارتش دنیا.
The strongest military force in the world may be struck so hard that it cannot get up again. We're doing TikTok edits. We're doing epic TikTok edits about matters of war now. That's the situation that we're in. And you know Trump's going to see one of these, and that's going to push him over the edge because of his decision-making issues. Stop. I don't know why. I know it's because they're trying to show off to their own followers and show strength, and that's what authoritarians do, but doesn't feel like a good ending is going to come of this story. The Americans constantly say that, okay, that they've sent a warship toward Iran. Of course, a warship is a dangerous piece of military hardware. However, more dangerous than the warship is the weapon that can send that warship to the bottom of the sea. Do y'all understand the nuance I'm going with here? I'm criticizing Trump's warmongering, and we've seen that now after he coined himself the peace president in multiple instances. He's making long lists of countries that he wants to overthrow regimes in. Doesn't work. Okay, so that stands. And also, last time we struck Iran, they responded by warning, if I'm not mistaken, Qatar ahead of time so we would know which base they were going to try to strike, and then we intercepted all of the missiles. Like, the point is they didn't really do it. They just did a show of like, oh, we responded. They didn't do anything. Stop with this. We would destroy the American empire. It's only going to make it worse. We're just escalating. Because you have people on both sides of this chest beating who care more about their appearance of strength than actual peace. Now, remember, Trump posted way back in 2013, remember that I predicted a long time ago that President Obama will attack Iran because of his inability to negotiate properly, not skilled. That feels like it applies right now perfectly to Trump. And he's the one who pulled us out of the deal that actually was working. Despite a lot of right-wing propaganda, it actually was working, preventing the development of nuclear weapons in Iran without us having to use our military, risk calamity through some sort of military operation. Plus, is Congress just going to sit and let Trump make whatever choice he wants with war without ever using what is supposed to be their power to approve of that?